All right, good afternoon all. We'll kick off. I understand that there's a few people have started to run away given flights home and so forth, and a few others that will be doing the same during and after this session. So we'll keep it moving pretty quickly as we go through. My name's Rob Gregory. I work for a waste collection agency, East Waste in Adelaide, and I'm really excited to be able to present this session this afternoon. We do have an online audience, and there will be time for questions. We'll do questions individually at the end of each of the presenters, because some of the presenters do need to part of that group that needs to run off. So if you do have any questions, we'll be monitoring online questions. So anybody online that wants to ask questions, throw them in the live chat, and we can ask them at the end of the presentations, assuming the guys give us time to ask questions. So challenging waste obviously covers a very broad range of topics, and we've got that in our speakers today. So it's a really exciting mix of speakers that we have. Undoubtedly you're all going to get great information from what they're presenting. So I'll stop talking, and I want to introduce Miss Renae McBrien, Queensland Children's Hospital, and designing waste out of the healthcare system. Thanks, Renae.
Where's my clicker? Do I have a clicker up here? Sorry. Oh, thank you. Cheers. Hi, everybody. My name's Renae. I'm excited to be here because there's anybody else here from health? Thank you. It's just my friend up there, Alex. I'm excited to share with you, because this might be an eye-opener to you, actually what goes on inside a hospital. So we have an award-winning program at the Queensland Children's Hospital. We almost just won the Premier's Award in Queensland, but we have won Clinical Excellence for Sustainability. Because actually when you think about it, if you don't look after the environment that we all get to live and share in Australia, we put more pressure on the health system. For an example, in Melbourne there was a thunderstorm coming across the fields. It picked up all the pollen, took that thunderstorm across into Melbourne CBD and created what's called an asthma thunderstorm. Every single emergency department was full. And that's because of an environmental consequence to the health. So we have to, inside our hospitals, help to look after the environment so that we can actually together create a better future. So I'm a radiographer. What does a radiographer know about bins? Not much. I've just been hanging around them for about a decade, and I am obsessed with segregating waste and building an economy out of waste. I've been lucky enough to do a War on Waste TV show with Craig on ABC, profiling what you're about to see, but that was an old show. This is what I'm going to show you what's new. So buckle up. I'm going to talk fast because I've only got 20 minutes, but we're going for a road show. So hospital waste, don't think about it as medical and COVID-based and regulated. It's not all regulated. It is 7% of the national carbon footprint though. That's a lot, right? But actually it's 62% of what we have inside hospitals is recyclable or compostable. Sorry. Oh, thanks. So it's important that we start looking at it differently. And what you're looking at there is I'm going to break down that 7% of carbon footprint of Australia. And you can see that most of it's coming out of private and public hospitals and pharmaceuticals. So you can see there's a big chunk of where I work inside a hospital has got a lot to answer for. Sorry. So what we actually need to do inside a hospital is we don't have the luxury of creating sophisticated waste systems. There is no money for that. We are a healthcare service, and you want to be treated, you want our money inside health to be treated for the sick when your family members get sick. So we are really running all of this on bare thread innovation. We have to be efficient. It has to be effective. You can't get a surgeon to do anything different but operate. So we have to really make something very clever inside our hospitals to prevent, reuse and recycle. So how have we done that? I can tell you that I've tried for years. It was clumsy, but I know now how to do it. It's creating an environmental sustainability plan. Put this thing down on paper, drag it into your strategic plan, but get the leadership involved. That is our executive leadership team. It's not a bunch of clinicians like I used to be that was passionate. These are the decision makers inside our hospital. And they have worked to create this plan. They've signed it off, which gives me the leverage now to make some pretty cool decisions inside our hospital. But as you can see, it's not a boring government document, right? It looks like a magazine. There are people all through it because this is about people change and behavioural change. We have to design waste out of health. You wouldn't think of it as a lot, but a metro hospital in an average city produces no less than 1 million kilograms of waste a year. Big ones, about 3 to 4 million kilograms of waste a year. This is not small-scale waste. It's really important that we look at it. So inside our hospital, we're working on how to design it out, not by looking at the bins. That's not smart. It's looking at what comes in the front door. We have to look at what we're procuring, what are we using, how do we use it, do we even need to use it in the first place, and then working on smart systems to capture it. So the reason why we nearly won that Premier's Award is because I turned waste with our green team into a value. So instead of treating it as trash, we created value, and in 1 year, in a COVID pandemic, we made $580,000 out of waste. So that's turning environmental sustainability into financial sustainability, and there's nowhere more important to do it than inside health, because we've had a bit of a financial strain lately. What you're looking up here also is at our diversion rate. How much percentage have we got out of the Queensland Children's Hospitals, out of landfill, and into viable recycling streams? And we hit 44, which I'm pretty proud about. But as you remember, I did say it was 62, so we've still got a long way to go. So this is showing that real money does exist in our bins if we just work smart, get the right vendors, get the right contracts, get the right green team on board, and we can actually turn it back into value of property of that feedstock of waste. So how do I do that when we have 6,000 people inside your average hospital? I've got 5,500 staff I need to train. And what we have to do is build a sustainable workforce that understand waste, like you and I might understand waste at a bit more of a higher level. Because inside hospitals, we have colourful rainbow bins. And it's not because we like that colour, it's because there is so much regulated and legislation around the way we use waste. Every clinician must know what a yellow bin is clinical waste, a red bin is pharmaceutical waste, cytotoxic waste is for chemotherapy. So it's quite sophisticated. Before we even get to look at resource recovery and waste, we have to actually understand, are we using those bins correctly? And we were using 28 tonnes of clinical waste. About 6 months ago, we ran an education program, we're down to 13 tonnes a month. So there is really a rapid improvement just through a waste team and a staff workforce that actually understand waste. So this is a looking at our collective call to action. It's admin, it's medical, it's nursing, it's everyone. The operational team, everyone inside our hospital acts responsibly with our waste. And our procurement. So one of the things we're trying to do inside a hospital is actually, we had a lot of supply chain issues through COVID, is actually dry that up and look for locally sourced, local products that are sustainable. And actually to try and go from this single-use culture that we have back to reusable. So this is one of my favourite projects we've driven, is we're trying to move 1 million pieces of single-use, unnecessary single-use pieces of plastic out of healthcare. Some plastic's good. This plastic's not good because it's used as a container from A to B and then back to the bin. And if we recycle it, that's great. But what if we reused it? So we replaced all of our single-use trays inside the hospital for reusable. And a nurse washes them, wipes them, dries them for 24 hours. They go back into the system. It was $4,000 to buy the fleet of reusable, and it's already saved $3,000. So it's also got that long-term financial gain as well. But looking at things like plastics inside hospitals, we don't have the luxury of having numbers all over our products. They're made across the world. No one really makes these items also to actually think about recycling. They're very complex, some of the things we have to capture in our waste systems. But we actually have a plastic feedstock system that can actually fuel a circular economy in Australia. And the reason why is because our plastics comes from the best environment. It is sterile, there's no yogurt, there's no lunch. In an operating theatre, in every operation, there's at least 15 to 20 pieces of plastic out which has had nothing in them but sterile water or a cleaning solution. And at the end of that case, it's never touched by a hazard material. That's the feedstock the plastic industry wants. And in one operating theatre, in about 10 operating theatres a day, you'd probably get about 660 litres of plastic. So it's a lot of volume. In our operating theatres, we have actually put in just plastic recycling bins inside, and that plastic has given a 50% reduction in landfill. That's how much clean, clear plastic feedstock is coming out of every hospital in Australia. So it's really important for the waste industry to understand and try and target this waste. It's not covered in blood and biohazardous, it's the good stuff. Come find us. What we also have is an amazing partnership with Cleanaway that allows us to use what we call in Queensland advanced recycling. And advanced recycling is a recycling bin, but we can start putting in different products, which are really important. LDPE, soft plastics. So in every operating theatre, They open up the case with a procedure pack, which is an LDPE bag, and they just start stuffing every single thing. Everything's opened like this, plastic on the top, paper on the bottom. Everything is sterile, handed into the sterile field. Every single piece of plastic is coming out, and this is huge volumes, about 1,300 litres a day coming out of operating theatres and ICU areas where they're doing a lot of high consumable turnover. So capturing soft plastics in health, there's a huge scope and large volumes of it coming through. And again, clean, clear, sterile. It's the stuff you want. What we can prove as well is even in a pandemic, we didn't leave COVID waste alone. So instead of saying COVID waste was just this avoidance, it had to go into clinical waste, it had to be regulated, we switched it into preclinical and postclinical. And anything preclinical, which means it hadn't gone to the patient yet, which means it was just clean plastics, could be recycled. And we managed to get our COVID waste down by 50% by that definition of what's clinical and pre and post-clinical. So what you're seeing here is unnecessary plastic that's in packaging and pathology labs. Never touched, just opened. Just opened and wasn't actually needed to do any COVID testing. It's just part of what comes in health. So as you can see, it's huge volumes of plastics again. We also have in health a PVC program, which is in about 800 hospitals around Australia. So PVC, number 3, it's really quite a lot of it in health. It's our oxygen tubing, oxygen lines, saline bags. So together with the Vinyl Council and product stewardship with Baxter, most hospitals in Australia recycle those, and they actually get recycled back into Bata gumboots, which is back in Bunnings. So if you go into Bunnings, it'll have a 50% recycled ticket on it. You'll know that's coming out of our hospitals. So that's a really important program as well. Inside our hospitals, we never put money in the bin. This is part of how we changed the financial reporting of waste, is we don't put 10 cents in the bin. So we have these amazing can bins all across the hospital, and we did the analysis, and the target was to get about 9,000 containers a month. That would be the ultimate goal. So we ran a campaign, and we are now at 10,000 a month. So we're actually collecting more than what our retail areas get because the staff are engaged. And that money from our Containers for Change goes back into our green team. So our green team are then empowered to buy procurement options. They've got a little bit of kiddie money to actually start making some innovative decisions as well. Talking about metal, so I'm going to skim through all of this. There's a lot of metal in health, and we should never put metal into the bin. You mine the earth to create metal. Don't put it back in the earth. Let's recycle it. So what we do, we have literally, it's a sanitary bin with just a flip-top lid, non-retrieval lid. It's past infection control. We can get laryngoscope blades, diathermy, single-use pulse oximeters. I'll even take an ECG dot. I'll take any piece of metal out of that hospital and put it into our recycling. We get about 1.5 tonnes a month. That's money. So I sell that then to local metal recyclers in Brisbane. So this is what it looks like. Again, this is not large scale, small scale. This is large scale metal recycling in places you probably weren't aware that it was there, which is really exciting. And even, I'll blow your mind, we used to throw out gold and solid platinum iridium into the bin. Now that doesn't make sense, but in our cath labs at the end of our tips, when we're finished using them, they were going in the bin. That's about 2.5 grand's worth, and that's about 6 weeks worth of work in a cath lab. So there's a lot going on inside health where this is all very precious and valuable. What we also do is try and make community partnerships. So looking, for example, all these amazing people who've turned up today with all this innovation across Australia, how do we partner with them inside our hospitals? So what we do is we use EcoBat for all of our batteries, and I'm telling you, we generate a lot of batteries. If we're changing the batteries in our beds, for example, the fleet of beds, and every battery gets changed, it's tons. An MRI battery was 400 kilograms on its own. So it's really important that we have the right partnerships to make sure our batteries are in that circular economy. But also things like Substation 33. Now that's a local thing up in Brisbane, but that's where instead of just dropping e-waste to be stripped and the resource recovery, Substation 33 takes e-waste and kids off the street that aren't fitting in with school education, right? The curriculum doesn't work. They're probably smoking some weed instead of going to school. Substation 33 is a place where they engage those kids and teach them to pull apart a keyboard and fix it. So then they can reuse that keyboard. They've upskilled that child, and he's to date, I think, employed about 600 kids across Queensland. So that's turning waste into something much more valuable. It's actually turning lives around, which is what we do up in Queensland Children's Hospital. So I'll talk about food waste because it's really important in hospitals. We use a lot of food, and we wanted to actually hit the target of how we can divert our food waste. So what we did was I did a deep dive into our food waste, understanding how it goes up, and it's different in every hospital, and how it can come down. And then analysing not to have bins everywhere, because food waste generates pests and smells, and actually you just want one bin in your hospital. So through a trial system, we analysed what we were doing, and we went through a whole audit and understood how it goes up to one bin at the pot wash area. So all catering assistants scrape every single plate from every single child down into one bin, and that one bin moves out to the loading dock. So we actually achieved, by doing this, training our catering assistants to value food waste to make sure it wasn't going to landfill. We got up to 85% of all food waste and kitchen production food waste into organics. And that took 6 months, but it is now set and forget and done. We also have, if we have non-perishable foods, Oz Harvest comes once a fortnight. That's if a cereal, even salt and pepper. But if a child from a non-infectious bed does not eat that lunch, we would not throw that in the bin. It will go into an Oz Harvest bin and they will collect it from us. If the bananas are going brown at home, we'd probably make banana bread. So that's what our kitchen does. Because we actually analysed the kids won't eat lamingtons. We used to always serve lamingtons. They'd go up and they'd come back down. They don't eat them anymore. So what the chef and I did was we figured out we made banana bread out of the old bananas. It goes up, it gets eaten. And we actually saved on those bananas as well. So it's just really adopting common sense across wide scale, which is really important. One of the other golden tickets we have in Queensland, and I encourage you to write this website down, is we have the Queensland Health Technology Sales website, which allows me and you, as a member of the Australian community, to buy government end-of-life things. So when I've got products that we can't reuse, but for common sense, it's not ready to even be recycled. This could be maintained, repaired, reused. It could be used in any other capacity, veterinary industry. So what we have is this website where I can sell things. And this is where I made $250,000 inside, I'll just flick that one back, $250,000 in 1 year is selling to the external people like you, businesses, community people, who might buy some office chairs that probably need regassing. They'll even buy those buckets that you're looking up there. I sell them to painters, local painters, and then they stopped buying buckets. We stopped recycling them, held that bucket in its highest value for longer. That makes sense. We also have what I want to do, an internal platform where I give things away for free, because quite often in big organisations, the left arm doesn't talk to the right. I create a platform where you can come and get these sorts of things for free. So if you've got a medical trolley that you don't want on 10A, 8B will take it. And that's had 100% uptake as well. But the health technology sales has allowed me to move things that are quite difficult to find a recycling solution for, like timber pallets. In COVID, we were able to sell those. But it's also about connecting some of this into the veterinary industry as well, which supports those. In particular, expired consumables. So everything that comes in, this is why my office sits at the in door, not at the bin door, is everything that comes into a hospital has an expiry date on it, just like your fridge. So we have to rotate stock all the time. We have to all be aware of dates and to use the products. So if it does expire, we connect and sell those into the veterinary industry. But I was sick of doing this. I did this for about 1.5 years and I was bored. So what I did create is a medical market day. And this is iconic, I feel, because what it is it's grabbing everyone in the hospital has to stop for 1 hour, everyone does a stock retake, and anything within 2 to 3 months that looks like it's going to expire has to come to the medical market day, and it is swapped. So emergency, who has high consumable loads, will take it, or ICU will take it, or theatre will take it. And actually what we did on the first one of these was save $183,000, and on the second one was save $112,000. Again, it's just common sense, but this is forcing that stock rotation on staff who are otherwise busy. But if we can't sell it, if we can't save it, what we actually do is really important to me, is that we actually connect with Rotary into the Rotary Rare. So this then allows unused and unwanted medical equipment to go into international aid. This is really important. This is about looking at single-use procurement. Things like a pair of crutches has a big number 2 in it and a line. That means you can only use it once. So if a child walks from here to the door, that's single use. If a child walks from here to the end of Coffs Harbour, that's single use. There's no definition, it's just being used, which doesn't, again, make a lot of sense. So instead of throwing them out, instead of looking to recycle them, and we could, they're metal, we reuse them and send them overseas. And this is actually where it's going. Supporting villages and people on planet Earth that don't have the privilege of some of the consumables we have in health. You can see that this is going by a boat because there are no roads where this goes. It's literally in such isolated villages, which is really important to support them with our consumables and our medical supplies that we can't use in Queensland. So just to recap, how has this all been possible? How can you create an army of healthcare workers which are busy working on health in our state of Queensland? It's about socialisation. People often ask me, what's your job? And I said, well, it's bins, it's sustainability, but really my job is to be social. So if I get in the lift and someone doesn't know my name, I feel like I'm not doing my job, because my job is to socialise this work so that everyone inside my hospital belongs to this work and actively participates. So you can see me down in the foyer, waving those gumboots, showing people how to recycle, getting the kids involved, doing Juice TV, which is an internal TV program that then pushes it back into the bed entertainment for kids so they don't miss out. But this is about socialisation. Trying to bring the keep cup back is on every single internal screen and external screen. It's about pushing the message out, not just internally, like normally bins are very back of house. This is about pushing the message and our sustainability work to the front. Our green team is our secret weapon. We have about 200 healthcare workers who are actively, and as passionate as I am about what we're doing inside health to create a sustainable healthcare service. So we actually have a monthly meeting, award program where we celebrate each other, and that's our award. And I'm so excited because there's a timber recycling person here, but that's how I recycle timber in our hospital. I laminate it together and I make awards out of it because I don't know what else to do with it, to be honest. So that's part of how we celebrate each other, is just literally by getting together every month, listening to people who work in all different parts of the hospital and creating active, sustainable solutions. So I'll thank you very much. I hope I didn't go over time.
That's exceptional, Renae. Have we got any questions for Renae? There is one at the back, so you'll need to come back up, Renae. That's all right. We'll get a microphone there. Go for it.
Hi, my name's Margot. I work for City of Canterbury Bankstown in New South Wales. That was the most inspiring and engaging presentation, I think, of the whole conference. But I'm a non-health department, but I'm just curious to know a lot of the crutches you were talking about, single use. What's the feedback up the chain to challenge the status quo of what the health department and the regulations might determine as what can be single use? It doesn't make sense that crutches are single use. So is there an upwards? Do you get much of an opportunity to go up the chain and really drive your experience working in the hospital? Second part of the question is, you're obviously doing amazing stuff in your hospital. What is this something that other hospitals are resourced enough to do? I've got no idea. But it's fantastic what you're doing. I love it.
Well, thank you for being so kind. I'll start with the first one about crutches, because it's depressing that they're single use and the definition of single use is so broad. I will tell you that it's all governed by the TGA. There are high-level legislation regulations around health that I simply can't challenge, but I will tell you that in the pandemic, the world ran out of crutches, and everybody knew that I had them all in my little cupboard. And they came to me and they said, I hear you've got crutches. And I said, well, now it's interesting, we can use them again, isn't it? So we had an engineer look at them, check all this. I'd written a criteria of how to reuse a crutch. I wrote a procedure about how to reuse a crutch. I challenged the system, and I won during pandemic because it suited the system. But again, it's a long list of challenge, but it can change. Like, I did prove that crutches can change. It's a hard thing to change permanently, I guess, is the answer. But I will say about, is health geared up for this sustainable, action? It's probably not. It's rearing up. There's not one of me in every hospital. I think there's not many in Queensland, for example. I've spent the last 7 years of my life busting every executive door to get this job. And I'm proud to say it's permanent, and I'm proud to say that the Queensland Children's Hospital, the future of children, listened. But I do spend a lot of time in places like here trying to convince people that this is worthwhile, not just because it's important to use what we use, but because there's money in our bins and it's resource recovery that can feed the industry. So thank you for being kind.
One more question, if we can just get the microphone across.
No, you need it for the stream.
I'm a nurse, and how fabulous that was. Thank you. Just have you looked at linen and blueies.
Oh, talk about blueies. Alex up here would be very interested to talk to you about, because he's got the greenie, which is the compostable Australian standard compostable greenie, which replaces the horrid bluey. And things like changing our procurement for that, you've got to get the gears in line and you've got to get everyone on board. It's a difficult thing to change procurement at that level. So we are looking at changing our our blueies to greenies. And I reckon, give us a year, Alex, we'd have it all sorted, wouldn't we? We could sort that out. The other one with linen. Linen is a big problem in health because it has a huge amount of water and energy to keep washing it. So I train our staff to not use them. I have dollar signs on every piece of pillowcase so that if you reach for a bunny rug for a child, you know it's 89 cents to wash it. So I'm trying to tap into the concept of what it costs to pull for something. But actually torn linen and how it actually, at the end of its life cycle, does need attention, which I think is probably going to lead on to our next presenter very nicely.
Wonderful. I think it's fantastic to have people outside the waste industry talking to us and bringing those different ideas and concepts, and the fact that you're challenging it at the front end, Renae, is fantastic. So, yeah, really well done, and obviously really well received. Our next presenter is Karie Soehardi, and Karie is Director of Circular Design Thinking, dedicated to the interior industry. So again, a little different to what we normally expect, but over to Karie to talk about us resources from the furnishings industry.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks for having me. Good afternoon. So you'll see a lot of similarities to what Renae was speaking about. We're just talking about a different industry. So today I'll be speaking about waste becoming a resource for the furnishings industry. Before that, I'd like to thank the AFA, the Australian Furnishings Association, for asking me to speak on their behalf. Helps if I use the... Right. So basically who we are, we're a consultancy, an environmental services consultancy for the textile, furniture and homewares industry. We cover everything off from product development, circular design, green supply chain and operations, waste and packaging, through to carbon emissions, carbon audits, and biodiversity projects. So our mission is to be out of business by 2050. The Albanese government has stated that to the UN that we will be carbon zero. That's Australia, carbon zero by 2050. So we're hoping we can, let go of what we're here to do now. But what we do find is that there is a concern about how there's a lack of urgency towards what we need to do in the next 7 years. So an important part of making waste a resource is some work we're doing with the AFA, and that is to bring textiles and upholstery skill sets back into Australia, because it all went offshore quite a while ago. And so to build a circular economy here, we need the workers, we need the materials. So I'll just summarise what we're talking about today. So waste becoming a resource for the furniture industry, and the fact that waste was a resource for the furniture industry quite a while ago. The global path of consumption and consumerism, which started in the 60s, and the way that we taught as retailers and different merchants that we no longer buy have sales every twice a year, like going to David Jones or Myers and standing at the door waiting to be let in. Basically, we were taught everything is on sale all the time, and that tended to build with online presence. And then we'll also look at what needs to happen to map out a circular economy so that we can actually stop treating waste as waste and value it as a resource. So what is waste? Well, there was a time when it didn't really exist because the repair, reuse mentality actually was available to us with local manufacturing, local labour, and each off-cut or trim was utilised in a repair or reuse. We didn't have that terminology then, but we did actually utilise the concept. So that was before we went offshore, and you'll see to the right, it's an iconic Parker piece of furniture. So if you know furniture, Parker is one of the Australian brands that were, you know, you'd save up, your mum and dad would save up, they'd purchase the Parker furniture. If there was some issue with the timber or with the upholstery or the foam, it would go back to an upholsterer or to a carpenter, and it would be fixed, it would be looked after. And then that would be handed from generations to generation. So then what happened is in the 60s, we started with global imports. So trade, as we know it today, started to snowball, and we haven't looked back. So this is what we are seeing, that we are suppliers and different organisations are competitors globally, not locally. And then there's a list of just, I think that are quite important. So our behaviour, our buying patterns changed from the 60s onwards. Production models equated to high volume, which means, so if you were going offshore, you could make things quite cheaply, but you needed the MOQs, which is the minimum order quantities, to make sure that you could fulfill an order, and hence we start to overproduce, we start to overconsume. The take, make, dispose model was created by default. So because we didn't have the local manufacturing infrastructure anymore, there was nowhere to fix things, and therefore, because it was so cheap, it was no longer needed, so it was disposed of. Surplus waste and continuous discounting devalued everything. So the perception changed in industry. I used to be a fast fashion buyer many, many years ago, and I've gone full circle. But when I purchased on volume for the stores, and I did not think of the consequence of all the samples or of the of the stock that was left over. To me, that was just markdown, and to basically screw down your suppliers to make sure they would help you get rid of the stock, and then it was no longer your problem. There was no accountability, with even though you had ordered it and you had produced the product. So this type of distancing of manufacturing overseas, it also stuffed with our psychology, to be honest. Basically what happened was that we stopped feeling that we were accountable for what we purchased or what we selected, and it was someone else's problem. So again, it's common knowledge that there's other areas in the world that have actually they've actually been damaged by our overconsumption and our overproduction. I shop, therefore I am. So fast furniture, what happened from the 60s onwards was that lifespans of, and I'm using sofas as an example, but lifespans diminished from 30 years. So you would get a sofa that was made for 30 years and it would be handed down to 10 years, to 5 years, and now even 3 years. So by the 1980s, Australia's exports were majority to the furniture industry in Asia, and those mega factories needed volume for sales. So low material costs and faceless labour removed any obligation from us as a country, to be honest. And the retailers taught the consumer that now we have to purchase quite quickly and quite on short time frames so that they can make their sales. And then online stores, back in the day when I had a textile and wallpaper studio, and I would be dealing with online stores, they were like, we don't care what you have, we just want as many cushion ranges as you have so that you can actually have those SKUs and we have real estate online. So it was all about the price, short term without any accountability. So these aren't actual before and afters, but it just gives you an example of what's happening in our society. In a short time frame, this is what happens. So we love the sofa from King. Again, I'm just using sofa because everyone understands, we're all sitting down. So we love the sofa from King. It doesn't matter how it's really made. We don't need to know the intricacies of it as a consumer. But what happens in several years' time is that it ends up on the verge. It ends up on the side of the street, and there's no accountability. So the councils and the charities are left with this issue, and there's no responsibility within the process. So what's missing? There's something missing in between the purchase of the sofa and then it ending up on the side of the street. And this just doesn't happen in retail land, it also happens in commercial land. As mentioned before, online SKUs, their real estate is to have as many as possible. So what happens is that things are built to fall apart. And I'm not... this is an image from Temple and Webster, but I'm not picking on Temple and Webster. I'm just saying that that's the type of psyche where manufacturers, and I've met many manufacturers here and overseas, where they are taught to use the cheapest materials possible so that it no longer lasts. And then the mentality is that that material no longer has a value. So what if we actually stepped back and we looked at waste as a resource? We could actually say, hey, guys, you may want to have X amount of sales per year, but what if you stop overproducing, use better materials that can be recycled, upcycled, or reused again, and then do a rent-to-buy type scenario where you're bringing skill shortages back to Australia and they are actually being trained to fix, repair, reuse, maintain, and get not just one company working on this product stewardship, but many, the whole industry. For me, this is the blue couch and fantastic furniture. In, I think it was the 90s, they released a blue couch that was like for $200. And this was, to me, the pinnacle of fast furniture. So it was then that people started to dispose of their furniture like you would dispose of fashion. So as we all know, fashion is one of the biggest polluters in the world. Furniture then followed suit, and now it was a trend. Instead of having something for a year or 2 years, it would be 6 months. And this is and this doesn't mean just furniture, it means rugs, curtains, homewares, you name it. Every part of the interiors industry, both in a retail, like from a residential perspective to a commercial, has this problem. It was basically just cyclical, where if you didn't have the newest, the shiniest, then you weren't up to what do you call it? Up to scratch. It was just like you no longer, you needed the newest to actually be seen, or it all became quite superficial. So I found this to be what you would call gluttony. It's just, this is where my environmental journey began, and I started working for companies that believed that this way could be changed, that waste could be designed out. So designing out waste and designing and building in a perception of value is very important. So the quality of materials, concepts, functionality and genuine design are the utmost important in furnishings. However, we forgot that with the mega factories, and we needed volume to survive. So our industry needs to be brave enough to stop talking about the cost of sustainability and rather invest. So it's not a cost, it's an investment, because we cannot go on the way we have. It is not infinite, it is finite. It's important that we design with products with the end-of-life solution at the very beginning, So my background is a designer, and at seed stage, when you're coming up with the concept, you actually need to understand what is going to happen to the materials, the offcuts, what's going to happen to the actual product at the end of life when no one wants it and it needs to be disposed, and also what are the channels, the correct channels, to make sure that that can happen. And it's important that industry goes on the journey. I think that is the toughest area of this shift towards the circular economy, because there's still this mentality that it will, it's never going to change. We can just do what we'd like to do. We have to support work to create a foundation to recycle and buy back locally. So we need consumers and we need interior designers to ask for recycled materials, local labour, and stop looking at just the price. So I know I spoke about materials, but the value of materials is key to waste becoming a resource. So product stewardships need to come into play as an industry. We've actually trialled with many different companies within the industry, and they've tried and tried again, but it's too expensive. Logistics, as you know, in Australia is quite expensive, but if we collaborate, so I'm part of a partnership called Tracks Textile Recycling, and we recycle rugs, and we can't do carpets, but we can do furnishings. And what we do is we actually get all the different brand owners to work together so that we can recycle and put it back into the circular economy. We also for waste to become a resource, we need to expect a percentage of recycled materials in everything that we purchase or specify. So there should be a tag just next to the price point that states how much recycled content there is in it. And we need to understand where we are today. We need to audit. We need to actually look at all the stock that we have in Australia that's just sitting there. So I was speaking to someone yesterday, and there's just multitudes and multitudes of containers sitting there with furniture for an airline that has been there for decades, and it's just sitting there, and it's good quality product, but they don't know what to do with it. They don't want to send it to landfill, and it could be repaired, reused and maintained and put back into the circular economy. And again, rent to buy and maintain for low people who can't afford high price points in sustainability, because sustainability is seen to be expensive. So what is possible is that if companies that have the low entry demographic rent to buy and maintain, we could actually alleviate a lot of the waste that we see on the streets, and the buy well, buy once psyche of for the high and premium brands. So it's not just post-consumer waste we need to factor in. I touched on it, but we did a study recently for the New South Wales EPA, and we found out that 3 to 5% of pre-consumer textile waste is furniture industry standard. That means that's all going into the bin. Things like tracks has only started recently, but it's at a cost, which the landfill is at like 50 cents, we're at $2.50, it doesn't equate. So there's a lot of work there to be done. And this is not just with textiles, this is to do with timbers and metals. It's all about 3 to 5% pre-consumer waste once you've looked at the production line and the offcuts that each material has. So the skill shortage, as I mentioned earlier, is another factor in injecting local skills back into industry so waste can become part of the loop. Without infrastructure and skills, locally materials will still be valued and disposed of. So we need to imagine a materials economy where imports can be minimised and the materials that we have right here can be used today. So in 2022, the Environmental Ministers' meeting declared that they would work with businesses to design out waste and foster materials by 2030. So we need to change. the infrastructure. Firstly, complacency needs to stop, and ESG strategies and products and ESG strategies need to be implemented into products and organisations, so not just through the products but also through the operations itself. And the biggest hurdle is education. So it's very overwhelming when you are running a local manufacturer. You've got local costs associated with the runnings, and then you have to implement sustainability. You don't have a budget for sustainability, but we need to help each manufacturer, retailer and importer understand that the price that it's in the long run is going to be more harm than to their business when legislations change, which is what the Albanese government is looking at. So just quickly to summarise, for waste to become a resource, we need to value the products and have end-of-life solutions designed into each piece. We need to stop overproducing and to build in repair, reuse and maintain infrastructures here in Australia. And we need to inject skills locally into Australia again, because some young kids don't even know what the word upholstery means. We need to be responsible as an industry and as individual organisations. We need to work on materials in a circular movement where product stewardships are created for the industry, not as individuals. And we need to help councils and charities and get them involved, because they're having to deal with the issues that we've created. So we need to track and be transparent about how we're working as well through things like the digital product passports. And most of all, we need to just start and make things happen in the next 7 years. So thank you for your time.
Fantastic. Carrie's got to run off very shortly. So any questions for Karie before we move on? Yep, can't run away that quick. We'll get a microphone down so our live stream can hear us.
Hi, Emma Thompson, Scenic Rim Regional Council. This might not be an easy one to answer, but you've talked a lot about the lack of skills now. I'm just interested if, where do we go there? Like, do we actually have trainers? Do we have demand for those skills currently? Is it a lack of marketing of the industry, or are we talking about a structural issue where there's other factors that are going to have to change first in order to, put those processes in place?
So it's all of the above.
Yeah.
So the work that we're doing with the Australian Furnishings Association is called Take a Seat With Us program. We're starting with upholstery. So if you go to any manufacturer here in Australia, they are screaming out for upholsterers. So what's happening is that there's and I'm just using that as an example. This is to do with carpenters and everyone in the furnishings industry, I'm not talking about flooring or the built environment. I'm talking about furniture. So what's happening is that we've developed a Take a Seat program where we're trying to bring that skill back into Australia. So the problem is that there's only one TAFE that actually does it all, and that's Holmes Glen in Victoria. We do have something in Ultimo, but it's slightly different. And then again, we have something in WA, in Perth, but there's not enough bums on seats, pretty much. And so we're now marketing to migrants who may have had that skill prior, and they've actually, we're looking at what they have, but they might not have the capabilities from from the English language. So it's helping them understand that they can get that help within the TAFE system, and then, get them into an apprenticeship and into jobs. Also, lots of manufacturers are finding that they'll train in-house, but they don't want to train in-house, and the generation gap of the upholsterers who are, about to retire, there's no one to take over for them. So that's why there's an urgency to get skills back here. So we are speaking with all the different TAFEs about what is possible going forward. Yeah. Thank you.
One more question.
Thanks for that. Is there any brands that you say you're doing the rent to buy model, or making just high quality products that you'd like to recommend?
Sure. So we're quite fortunate to be working with early adopters in the industry. So alongside the associations, we are working with some premium retailers. So the likes of Space is one of our clients, and they are looking through everything from not just their furniture, because they're importing, they're looking at their carbon emissions. So they're known to import Italian products, but then they're working with suppliers who have redesigned iconic pieces to then be dismantled, to then be updated. Then there's Colt Design. So we're working with the Cultivated Arm, and Cultivated Arm is all about repair, reuse, maintain. And they are working with different, if they don't have the manufacturing capability, they're working locally with what's possible, and they have us working on finding different solutions, say, for example, foam, timbers, everything, so they can actually understand the different pathways. So if they have damaged stock or they have offcuts, etc., it can go out, and then if they want to continue using it, where to get things recycled and repurposed. So, yeah, but there's quite a few. There's it's building. If you look at the more premium brands, but we have been speaking to the mainstream, because they also know that they're part of the problem and they need to change too. So I think this area is going to actually change in the next 3 to 5 years quite quickly.
Wonderful. Thanks heaps, Karie. Round of applause. We'll keep pushing on, but just remind everybody, details of our speakers are available on the conference app or online. So if there's anything you do want to follow up, by all means, encourage you to do so. Now turn to Jerome Koh, who works for New South Wales EPA, and has done so in a few different iterations across his career there, but currently is the lead in a project establishing a nationally consistent hazardous waste tracking system. So, welcome, Jerome.
Thank you, Rob. Can everyone hear me? Hang on, just lost my notes. Good afternoon and hello. My name is Jerome, as Rob has said. I want to first acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we speak, and on which we meet, the Gumbaynggirr Nation, and recognize their continued connection with their lands, waters, and culture. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and also welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander colleagues who are here with us or online. And hello also to our live stream audience. So I'm here today to talk to you about the integrated waste tracking solution that the New South Wales EPA and the Queensland Department of Environment and Science are developing together. So in the audience is also Sally Thomas from the Queensland Department of Environment and Science and partner in crime. So while this is a project about problem and hazardous waste management, I think it's also, and I hope to show, that it is also a project about collaboration and cooperation, which I think has been a recurring theme throughout this whole conference. To start, I would like to take you through the reasons for why we're doing what we're doing. And it begins with what is hazardous waste management. So hazardous waste is waste that poses risks to the environment and human health purely because of the nature. And as a result, it's usually more regulated by governments. It is something that is generally carried out by private industry and regulated by governments. And local governments and local councils sit somewhere in between, so they do a bit of handling hazardous waste management, but also do a bit of regulation the hazardous waste management as well. But an important point is that for a successful and proper management of hazardous waste, it really depends on a regulatory regime that supports the legitimate market and protects the legitimate market from rogue and illegal operators. So, one of the additional regulations that I was talking about is the necessity to track the movement of hazardous waste. And there's a national framework that's been established in the late 90s for tracking the movement of hazardous waste as they move across jurisdictions in Australia. Now, what can go wrong? So the current situation is there's a national framework, but each of the jurisdictions pretty much do their own thing. They have their own legislation, they've got their own systems, they've got their own processes for how they implement this national framework. And many of the systems and processes that they use are also a little bit outdated and no longer really fit for purpose. So for example, there's still a heavy reliance in both New South Wales and Queensland on paper processes and manual processes. And this is really not in line with the movement towards a data and evidence-based regulation in the 21st century. There's also a real or perceived barriers to sharing of data between jurisdictions and between the regulators and industry. So all of that leads to issues and gaps that can cause great problems, which I'll show you in the next slide. So what can go wrong? What the current situation does is that it creates barriers to compliance because people are confused, or industry users are confused by the different rules and systems and processes between jurisdictions. And when they have to move waste from one to the other, they have to use the systems of and report to both regulators using different systems, different processes, and different rules. This allows rogue operators to really slip through the system, undercut the legitimate market, and create havoc, not only for the regulators and the environment and humans, but also for the legitimate market when they seriously undercut the market. And a clear example of this is what happened in Victoria a couple of years ago, where a rogue operation pretty much diverted around 50 to 70 million litres of hazardous waste material from the legitimate market and caused 2 major fires in metropolitan Melbourne, which ended up causing very serious environmental, human health harm, economic harm, and great market failures for a little while in the legitimate market. So what do we want to do about it? So we thought about the issue, and we think what we want to do is to really create a nationally consistent system for tracking hazardous waste, not only in New South Wales and Queensland, but across the nation. Because we believe that what we need is effective regulation or regulatory regime that promotes market stability and confidence, that then allows the activity of managing hazardous waste to be carried out in a safe and proper manner. That regime should improve. So what we want to do is to improve the consistency in how we regulate hazardous waste management. We want to remove as many duplicative processes as we can. We want to lower the barriers for industry users to comply. So more consistent regulation, easier to use, easier to understand, easier to comply with regulation systems and processes. We want to enhance accessibility to data and also the use of data. And we want to facilitate the sharing of data, not only between regulators, but also between regulators and industry to the extent that is possible, so that data is not only used for regulatory purposes, but it can also be used for legitimate business and market purposes. So, So this nationally consistent system consists of 4 areas of focus, which are up there: a digital and tracking and data solution, a consistent system to classify and characterize waste, consistent policy and legislative change to support what we are trying to do in the systems and in the classification stakes, and also a data sharing framework that allows jurisdictions to share tracking data. The focus of what I'm doing is actually on the digital tracking and data solution. Flowing up to the next to what we are trying to do for this digital tracking and data solution. As I said, this is a interjurisdiction collaboration between the New South Wales EPA and the Queensland Department of Environment and Science. And what we want to do is to work together to build an integrated system that connects both jurisdictions and also replaces the existing systems in both jurisdictions that are outdated and no longer fit for purpose. Mainly focusing on paper processes and manual processes. The key outcomes, therefore, for this solution are to have what we call a nationally consistent solution. So what do we mean by nationally consistent? We want to create a single solution for New South Wales and Queensland. So in New South Wales, we actually have two systems that we use to track problem and hazardous waste. So we want to unify it and just say, let's just have one, don't have two. We also want to use the same platform for New South Wales and Queensland because we believe that that will simplify the processes and the system used for tracking the movement of waste between Queensland and New South Wales. So we want to lower the compliance barrier for people who are doing that activity and make it simple and easy to understand and use. By creating a solution that can work for two jurisdictions, we hope to prove to other jurisdictions that they can also adopt the system if they want to. The other thing that we are hoping to do is to connect the solution with the existing system in EPA Victoria called Waste Tracker. Now, Waste Tracker has just been in existence for a little under 2 years, and we want to also demonstrate that if a jurisdiction does not want to adopt the system, they can do the other thing and connect with our solution. So the ultimate ambition is to create a nationally consistent integrated network of tracking systems that then allow jurisdictions to share data with each other, but also to enable the quick compilation of data from all jurisdictions around tracking and the movement of waste, hazardous waste. Another key outcome is, of course, improved efficiency for regulators in actually capturing the data, accessing the data, and then using the data to do our jobs in compliance enforcement, but also in planning for future infrastructure and other policy decisions that this might relate to. We want a modern, high-quality solution that industry and industry users can use, and it's easy for them to use, intuitive for them to use, really cuts down on the costs and improve their business practice. As I said, the use of data can also lead to improved regulatory and business decisions. And finally, we want a system that will be widely adopted by industry. Translating these key outcomes into the key features of the solution that we're hoping to get. So we're looking at a system that has high configurability, and this will allow the system or the solution that we're creating to be used by other jurisdictions, because we want to show that the systems can be configured to match what each jurisdiction needs in terms of their legislation and policies. The high configurability will also allow the solution to be expanded to other regulatory applications. So we might not just want to stop at tracking hazardous waste. So for example, circular economy has been a very key focus of this conference. We see it as potentially a system that can also support circular economy by tracking the movement of materials from generation all the way to regeneration or reuse or repurpose. We want it to be a fully digital solution so that the data that we collect can be easily manipulated, shared, and analyzed. It has to be easy, efficient, and low cost to use. And we also want the solution to be easily connected with other business systems. So this will allow, first of all, connection with other jurisdictions if other jurisdictions do not want to necessarily adopt the solution. We also want it to allow connection with other business systems for companies and waste companies that have to use this system. If they already have a native waste management system that they use, what we want to do is to allow to connect their native systems with the integrated waste tracking solution so that it removes the double entry that's required. All they have to do is to put in the data that they need and collect in their native systems, and through the electronic interface or an API, you can push that data directly into the into our tracking solution without a need to enter the data a second time. And similarly, we also wanted to allow it to connect with third-party business systems that offer business management systems to other operators. In the same way, if they can push the data directly from what they collect straight into the integrated waste tracking solution, then it reduces the need for double entry and makes lives a lot easier for their customers in terms of complying with our regulations. So this is just a quick solution overview of what the solution will look like. So there's just basically 4 layers. The first layer is the tracking layer. So that's the system just tracks where from the location where the waste is picked up, from when it's traveling to the location it's been dropped off, all the way to when it's being dropped off. So that's the tracking layer. The second layer we call the authorization and agreement layer, and that's the process where the generator enters in the agreement with an agent or a transporter or receiver to manage their waste. And any authorization required either by the regulator in some instances or by the receiver in other instances is also handled in that layer. The third layer we call a public information layer, and this is what we call a marketplace of sorts, where people who want to have waste that they want to manage can go to that layer, find out information about which operators are able to manage their waste and who is actually authorized to manage their waste. So make it easier for people who generate waste to find a legitimate operator to manage their waste properly. We also hope to provide in the public information layer more general guidance for generators to classify the waste so that it tells them more about which operators they can use to manage their waste. And finally, the last layer is the reporting data and analytics layer, and this is really from the regulator point of view. We want analytics and reporting for the regulators to look at the data that we capture from the solution and use it to track compliance, inform policy, and highlight any issues with the systems. So the next part of the ambition is around industry engagement. So probably from the theme of this conference, it should be more like industry collaboration. So what we want to do is move away from the traditional model of doing things from a regulator point of view, where you have a very strict regulatory stance. We just say, this is the system, we build it, you guys have to use it. So that approach tends to create gaps and duplication for industry users, and just creates a lot of sometimes unintended costs for industry. We want to move from that model to a model where we co-create or co-design the new solution with industry, so that industry gets the opportunity to give us input and advice on how the solution should be developed so that it actually works with how their business actually operates. And we see that integrated solution that's co-created with industry has a better chance of being accepted by industry down the track. So turning to, it's a lot of talk of what we want to do. Now I turn to what we have done so far. So we went out to market to find a supplier who could procure and who could develop and design and deliver the solution for us. And after the procurement process, which is run over a period of 12 months, we ended up with KPMG. And we are developing the solution on the KPMG Origins platform, which is a track and trace platform. And this is one of the key reasons why they were selected, because their track Origins platform already had the very desirable characteristics of being highly configurable, and it's also a highly connectable platform. And because of that, we believe that it allows accelerated development of the solution for us. In terms of industry engagement, we are also engaging with a couple of groups. So we're engaging with a group of industry expert users who are really made up of industry experts who provide input and advice into the design and development of the new solution. And we going through a co-design process with this industry engagement group. EPA and DEA is also engaging with industry peak bodies who provide advice on whole of industry and sector-wide issues. We are also engaging with other jurisdictions like EPA Victoria to look at connecting with their waste tracker system, and the Commonwealth and other states and territories down the track to get interest in joining our integrated solution. And finally, we're also talking to third-party software providers in the same vein to try to connect their systems with ours. So if you belong to one of those key stakeholders and you want to be involved, please contact us. Details are coming up. This is just a quick look at the industry engagement groups and the engagement sessions that KPMG has put forward in the time frame. As you can see, we have completed 4 cycles of the 8-cycle development process. But it's not too late because KPMG have a website. And their website contains all of the information of the engagement sessions so far. So if you've missed out, you can go and have a look at the website and catch up on what's been discussed and, basically find out what's going on. They also have really regular project updates, and forms for you to register your interest if you're an industry expert or if you're a waste management software provider and you want to get in touch with them. So it's a QR code there. Please scan it if you're interested. I'll also have brochures down the front. If you're interested, please pick one up, and the QR code is also there. So what comes next? Very quickly, time horizon, next 6 months, we hope to do all of those things, complete the process, get a whole solution prototype going that people can come and play with. We're planning and testing the change management and transition in process. We'll be carrying out industry training and then transition in the industry within the next 6 months or thereabouts. Still a bit loose. Next 1 to 3 years, we're looking to engage with other jurisdictions. We have businesses set up the APIs and then explore advanced analytics. Further into the horizon, in the next 3 to 5 years, we're looking to expand the application to other applications, such as supporting circular economy and potentially other regulated items. But once we get the system, we can have a look at all of those things. That's the end of my talk. So any questions, my contacts, emails for the IWTS engagement mailbox, come talk to me. For Queensland, if you're from Queensland, have questions about Queensland's implementation, that's the email you should email to. If you want to talk to KPMG about what they can do for you, the email's there as well, and go to the project website to have a look. Thanks.
Great work. Many thanks, Jerome. We're going to push ahead just because we're running short on time and want to give Mark the appropriate time to present on his. But I think it's great, Jerome, that we're actually seeing a state agency look beyond just its own borders to create something nationally. So fantastic for that. Jerome also does have to run away very quickly, so if there are any questions, make sure you nab him as he runs out the door. Finally, Mark Winter from Kimbriki Environmental Enterprises. Rounding out our conversation today on challenging waste, but talking around particle board and some of the, obviously the issues with that, but how they've achieved to have a great outcome in this space. So please welcome Mark to the lectern.
Thank you, Rob, and firstly, well done everybody. It's Thursday afternoon, it's well past 3 o'clock. I've set my timer to 15 minutes. We'll see how we go. I think we should be able to get there. So a little bit about Kimbriki, just before we dive into the engineered timbers. Kimbriki is a somewhat iconic resource recovery centre in the beautiful northern beaches on Gadigal land in northern beaches of Sydney. And we do quite a range of things to encourage people to separate waste and bring waste in so that we can recycle. And we recycle about 250,000 tonnes of materials a year of all sorts of things, from compost to brick to rock to stone to metal to e-waste. And one of the other problems we have is that we also landfill about 50,000 tonnes of material a year. And what we're constantly looking for is opportunities to not landfill that 50,000 tonnes. So this is really a story about relationships and romance and being courted and having a whole lot of people coming up to you with a whole lot of great ideas, and then working out who it is that you actually want to take out on that magical first date. It started with engineered timbers, and engineered timbers are a whole range of different things. I'd always thought, oh, it's particle board is a fairly standard comment, but in fact there's a whole heap of stuff that qualifies as engineered timber. We already recycle timber, so clean virgin timber will get chipped up and made into wood chips through our composting facility, but all this type of stuff reports to our landfill, to our transfer station, and then eventually to our landfill. So you can see all the different types of products there. There's a broad range. A lot of them are single-use packaging or offcuts and leftovers from buildings, works and that sort of deal. And we needed to come up with some sort of idea of how to manage that. And this is where the sort of first fleeting holding of hands and romance began. I get approached by a lot of organisations with great ideas about recycling things, and very often it comes from a position of, I've come up with a new way of recycling something and it's going to make X, and I'll work out people to buy X at some stage, but look, the process is great, you've got this stuff, we should do it. And to be honest, I always go through a bit of a sort of evaluation using my essential criteria. And my essential criteria really are, what are they going to do with the stuff when they've finished whatever it is that they're going to do? And is what they're going to do actually going to work? Have they done it before? Has somebody else done it? It's very rare that there's a totally new idea that nobody's ever contemplated, or a wonderful new product that's never entered the marketplace before that is able to be sustainable. And that's where Redirect, our partners in this, and I'm sure you've all seen the fairly impressive stand on the way in. Redirect were a very attractive partner for us. Firstly, they were a lot more wealthy, and we always like that, and a lot bigger in scale and volume and capability, and that was also reassuring. But I think one of the things we really liked about Redirect was the fact that they integrated their business and they had pull. They weren't coming to us to solve our waste problem, they were coming up to us to solve their feedstock problem. And that was a really good place to start. They also have enormous capacity to do their own logistics, their own transport, their own manufacturing, their own marketing of finished product, and a ready marketplace, happy to take that material, looking for somewhere to take it. So they were ticking a lot of boxes. What could we bring to that relationship? Whilst we like to be, have the tab picked up for us and the door opened, clearly we needed to be able to bring something along. What we were able to offer was a chance for us to work together on a sort of new model for Redirect. Redirect at this time, and this was now over a year ago, I guess. I'm sorry, I'm looking at Aaron from Redirect, who's been gracious enough to come along on a late Thursday afternoon. At that stage, it was quite a new concept of actually separating materials that had been mixed up in waste. Redirect's business model at that stage, and still, and very soundly, is quite focused on offcuts and leftovers from businesses and manufacturers. So waste that is very clean and waste that is from a single source of origin and easily managed and maintained, and that's a very good place to start. What we were able to offer to them was a chance to test out whether we can actually do this from your average punter filling up a ute, a tipper, a trailer of waste, and be able to see if we can tap into that engineered timber, which we know is there and we know is currently being tipped and buried, but somehow we had to work out a way together of how were we going to actually encourage people to bring that to us separately and present it in a way that it became reusable as a product. So these were some of the benefits that we were able to provide, and of course we had a big site and lots of people came with this stuff anyway, and we had excavators and machines to help move things along, and that always helps. One of the things we did quite early on, and I think both organisations are quite good at promotion and advertising, we very quickly decided that all the sort of traditional methods of promotion and advertising were probably a bit wasted when I've got 600 to 800 people a day driving onto my transfer station and tipping the stuff that we were looking for out on the ground. Didn't seem much sense to go to social media and have a blog and do all these things. I'm showing my age a bit. When we just had all these people driving in and out every day, it seemed like the obvious thing to do was to come up with a bit of a flyer that was pretty straightforward and explained a little bit about what would happen and a little bit about what we could deal with, and just wander up to people and have a bit of a yak while they were out unloading the products that we were going to try and get hold of. So this is our transfer station. This is a fairly normal sort of day. We've probably got about 12 vehicles there. There's a builder with a tipper trailer. There's some small little single axle trucks. These are our sort of day-to-day bread and butter customers, and most of them, or a lot of them, have engineered timber somewhere in there. It's just a question of where and how. So the challenge was for us to go and meet all these people, talk to all these people, and get them to understand that if they just over here, there's the engineered timber sign, there's the drop-off area, which we constructed as part of the trial. Bring your stuff over here, sort it out, separate it, and let's see if we can establish a bit of a self-haul market with customers who could take advantage of a bit of a price margin and a bit of a benefit, as well as then looking at how we could sort and recover the mixed waste. So we started with these self-haul guys because they were easy. So we got a bunch of builders that we knew and said to them, look, if you bring this stuff in, we'll give you a discount of about nearly 50% on the normal disposal cost, but it's got to be a certain standard, it's got to look like this. If you bring it in and you make a mistake a couple of times, we'll let you and we'll give you the cheaper price. But if you can work out how to play the game, then we can keep you going on that. And that was very much a sort of reflective process of just having some conversations, and people picked it up pretty quickly. So once some of the bigger builders worked out they could just separate their piles of building sites and then run one collection vehicle to 5 or 6 building sites and bring up all this clean stuff, that became a bit of a groundswell. But the one where we're really getting a lot of volume, as I'm sure Renae we were discussing earlier, is from single-use packaging and pallets, but not pallets as pallets, like a CHEP pallet, but a single-use softwood pallet that has engineered timbered plinths, like the little compressed fibre plinths that sit in the middle, or some other little feature that rendered it unsuitable for any other use than landfill, or this process. So you can see quite a lot of the stuff on the pile here is this sort of single-use timber, as well as the traditional stuff of building offcuts and bits and pieces. We then had to start working out a way of actually pulling some of this stuff out of the loads as well. And we've tried a bunch of things. They were all very manual and they were all very low tech. But interestingly, the loads that were coming out were enormously clean, which is the benefit of a positive sort and the benefit of sorting from big bulky materials. Traditionally, we would chop them up into pieces and run them over a conveyor belt and pick them up off a line. And that's something that we may well explore, which I'll mention briefly at the end here. But for now, and up until now, we've actually done quite a lot of recovery simply by employing a bunch of bins, small bins, little tipper vehicles, and just getting our staff to pull them out and pop them in a bit of a pile. And I have to have a quick sort of word up for Bob. Bob Boot's been with us for 23 years. We celebrated his 80th birthday last week. He still surfs pretty much every day, and we pretty much every day have a beer as well, to say at the end of the day. But Bob is certainly one of our sort of busier, more active landfill attendants. And we actually pull out quite a decent volume of material just by this sort of process. So results, numbers, what are we actually doing, what's been going on? So we had a soft start in May, June, we sort of got it going. We're seeing a fairly sort of consistent pattern since then. We've split this up into the self-haul, which is the sort of customers bringing it in themselves, versus the stuff we're pulling out ourselves. And you're seeing at the beginning in particular, we've sort of stuck on a fairly consistent, Christmas sucks, let's not count Christmas, very, very busy period for us, and we've just had the ability to access the material fell away remarkably. But pretty much throughout, we've stuck fairly consistently on the recovery from sorting and pulling it out ourselves manually. What's been interesting is there was a fairly quick uptake of self-haul, and then it stopped. And it's stayed very static ever since. And we've clearly hit some sort of wall of why aren't we getting any more self-haul? It's difficult to know exactly what that is. I think that there is a price point issue where it needs to be a lot cheaper to encourage segregation by the smaller people. I think there's also just an element of, oh, look, you know, the customer's paying, I'll just put the price up a little bit so it doesn't really matter. And I guess that's led us to contemplate a black screen. What's the next sort of step from here? I mean, clearly we've sort of a little bit, the numbers are good, and those numbers are sort of, you know, 110, 115 tonnes a month, which is a reasonable figure, but it's probably a quarter or less of what we've actually got to offer. And we would really love to pull that up to about 500 tonnes or so a month, which is fairly easily achievable. And I think then the ultimate goal would be to get it up to around sort of 1,000 a month, so we're pulling out about 12,000 tonnes a year. We think there's somewhere between 16 and 18,000 tonnes available if we got every single little piece of everything. Fortunately, I didn't bring any notes because I was going to rely on the PowerPoint. So we'll quickly jump to my next slide, which I'm pretty sure said something along the lines of where to from here. And it was also about another relationship, an even more long-term one, sorry, Aaron, which was with Ann Prince Consulting, because the thing to understand with mixed waste is it's very mixed, and it's easy to say, okay, well look, in a certain sort of setting like a hospital, or I have a fixed, where the material I receive changes every day, all the time, and is very dynamic and very mixed up. So to make sense of all of that, you need to keep auditing, and we did audit in 2016, was the last time we did a very detailed audit with Ann Prince Consulting, who I would recommend to everybody as a great operator and a great company. And that gave us some fairly detailed results at the time about what our waste makeup was like and the size and the structure of it, which would then inform us on going to the next level. The next level for us is to think about a waste treatment facility of some description to take the 35, 40,000 tonnes of waste that's going through that transfer station. We landfill some direct material as well. Break it up, separate it out, and give us the ability to recover the engineered timber stream in particular so that we can maximise the capture there, but also some of the other streams as well that we know are there that, again, are not practical to pull off a pile, but may well be practical if we're putting it through a more mechanised system. And they're the sort of obvious ones that you can see on the pie chart there. The sort of obvious ones like, sorry guys, I can't help myself, it's the end of the show. But they're things like cardboard is a fairly obvious one. There's a lot of cardboard. It's, again, a difficult one. It's a bit like the soft plastics debate. There's an enormous amount of cardboard in a tonne. So if you're charging by the tonne or you're getting paid by the tonne, it's a huge effort to get a tonne. But nonetheless, it's a valuable product for us. We get revenue from it when we on-sell it and send it back out to market. So it's something that's well worthwhile chasing. There's obviously ferrous and non-ferrous metals, and there's bricks and concrete. But what there is about 30% is engineered timber. A small amount of that's CCA, but the vast majority of it is reclaimable. And we're really excited by the prospect of pulling more and more of this out, particularly because the relationship with Redirect offers us the ability to do this, a genuine, nice little closed loop. I know we talk a lot, everybody talks a lot about circular. I know there's so many logos and icons and symbols that talk about full circles and loops, but the Redirect model is totally fair dinkum. They take a piece of chipboard, they go, they use it, they bust it, they fix it, they crush it, they make it back into a piece of chipboard. You really can't get much better than that. And so we're very excited to continue the partnership with them. We're hoping to be able to provide them with more and more feedstock of a quality that helps them to keep the materials going round and round. Obviously, from a technical perspective, it's better to be able to bring some fresh material into the mix, so we're not just making chipboard out of chipboard, but we're also making chipboard out of blue pine offcuts or single-use pallets or whatever other materials you can get. So our next stage from here is to do another audit to check our 2016 numbers, continue to work with Redirect about what sort of materials can go through the processes, what other opportunities there are to capture things that we're not currently getting, and then start going into a planning mode to look at building a form of facility. I've been involved with a bunch of different MRFs, dirty MRFs, composting facilities, and sometimes the sort of technological answer is not necessarily the best answer. Sometimes it's better off keeping things quite simple and just looking at sort of manual, fairly basic processes. So we don't want to jump to any conclusions at this stage, but the one thing we can tell from the last 12 months is that the material is there, it's absolutely available to get, and that we can give every single kilogram that we can generate from that site to Redirect, confident in the knowledge that it's going straight to a reprocessing facility and coming straight back out again. We're actually hoping to do some redevelopment work on a couple of our offices and seeing if we can get some Polytech products to be installed and put a little bit of a plastic window in there and go, sourced from Kimbriki. May not be entirely true, but some proportion of it somewhere in there will definitely be our material. So look, I've hit the 15-minute mark. I'm going to miss my planes, probably so quite a few of you. Seem to have killed the AV, so I think that must be a bit of a finishing line. So thank you very much, everybody. Happy to take any questions.
Many thanks, Mark. And quite clearly you get 3 votes for being last and only having half your presentation show. So great work. Questions for Mark before we run away to afternoon tea? One right down the very back. We can get a mic across.
Thanks, Mark. Christian from Local Government New South Wales. Just curious in terms of, is there a gate fee or do you get paid? How does that?
Yeah, so in terms of the finances, we do get a gate fee for that material. We have significantly discounted it below our normal gate fee. It's about half or slightly less than half of our normal gate fee for mixed waste. But we do still charge, and that's probably part of the source separation barrier that we're looking at, whether reducing that, is there some sort of price point that we can reduce that to? I guess we wanted to understand our costs as well, and that was part of the process of the trial, was understanding what are our costs associated with collecting, sorting and loading out, because that material has to get crushed and loaded out with our equipment as well. So, you know, going forwards, I think part of it will be reviewing that price pointing and looking at further discounting and seeing if we can get more, encourage people to do their own separation by giving a better margin between the two prices. But I think that's definitely one of the things we'll be doing going forwards.
Amanda Kay, New South Wales EPA. It's more of a comment really, which is to say that's so excellent that you found a pathway for that stream. And obviously we've had lots of conversations with the organics industry about engineered timbers in the organic stream, and they're so hard to identify. It's so difficult to know what they actually made of. There are so many challenges there, and it's just really great to hear that there is a really, really circular great solution. So thank you.
No, well, thank you very much. I really can't claim very much of that at all. I mean, I think we're, to some extent, this whole opportunity exists because of, you know, Aaron's efforts with Redirect to produce a market and to produce a sort of pathway for the product. So, look, thank you and appreciate that, but it's certainly very much a partnership, and to, you know, some extent I feel like we're a bit of a facilitator. Hopefully this is a model that Redirect can roll out with a whole bunch of transfer station operators around Australia and just keep building critical mass on recovering this stuff, because yes, you're right, it's very difficult material to find a reuse for, and there have been some problematic false starts in the past, so yeah, we're pretty excited too. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. In some respects I think it's disappointing that we had to wait till this time to have the 4 presentations that we had. They've all been exceptional, and I think in their own different way highlight that there are answers to anything that we're looking at. We've just got to apply ourselves, look at it in different lights, as Renae has done, and Mark in particular, cross-jurisdictional as well. There's opportunities there that we can do to solve those critical masses. You just need those passionate, inspired people, and we certainly had that amongst our 4 presenters today. Off to afternoon tea now, which is sponsored by Waste Enforcement Association Australia. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the conference.